Hi everyone, welcome back. It's the Luxe Bag Princess, and today I am going to be talking to you guys about allegedly one of the largest scammers in the online luxury community that there has ever been. Now, this is sort of a follow-up segment to a video that I actually made 6 months ago on the Luxe Tea. The Luxe Tea is my Patreon based, I guess you would call it video journalism series, where I discuss essentially lore and history of the online luxury community as it pertains to Louis Vuitton. And this person was actually the subject of my very first video. So the person that we are going to be talking about today, and again, I use pseudonyms, is CC, and CC is the owner of a business called Brat's Closet. Now, again, I use pseudonyms for everything, so that is why I am saying this all now. I will not be repeating those phrases again to ensure that I don't mess them up later in this video. So we are going to be talking about CC and their business, the Brat's Closet. Now, every time I make videos that use pseudonyms, a lot of people always say, well, how is this actually like useful or helpful to us? Because you're not telling us who it is. And it's like, I agree. I really wish I could share exact names of everybody involved, but the reality is the way we talk about people online has changed. There was an era where you could just talk about people online freely, tell it as it is what it is, and that just was that. But in the modern era, there is a completely different set of rules for talking about people online. So I will apologize in advance that I cannot give exact names for everybody involved, but that is my means of essentially protecting myself in the space of talking about people online. But we are talking about CC at the Brat's Closet. So let's run it back a little bit. As I mention all the time, I entered the luxury online resale space in what would have been about 2014, 15, 16. I started collecting Louis Vuitton in around 2013, 14. Prior to my entrance onto the scene, the largest platform for luxury handbags, whatever, discussion, whatever, would have been the Purse Forum. The Purse Forum, in my opinion, is quite archaic. Again, but this was a different time where social media was done very heavily in a forum-based media because, I don't know, my guess is it was easier for computer programming purposes to do it that way. But it essentially meant creating lots of threads of people like commenting somebody and then somebody going under them and under them and under them. It got really complicated very quickly. So the next major frontier, which is where I would have been introduced, was Facebook or Meta. Facebook became a haven for luxury online resale in Facebook groups. And I am a huge fan of Facebook groups. I am in Facebook groups for basically like everything under the sun, like every hobby I have. It's a great way to connect with people all over the world who essentially share the same interest as you. And I think it's a very interesting thing looking into, because really what I see a lot is I see a lot of social anthropology. There is the social anthropology of the digital world and the digital landscape. And essentially what that means is we don't really have the ability to assess this in the modern day because most of the world that we live in is sort of already established. But the digital space is a place where very quickly, when a new digital frontier is opened, people immediately swarm in, and we see a lot of these social anthropological, I don't know if that's a word, but we see these actions start to take place. So One of the ways that I can express this a lot is I am very big into Animal Crossing. And when Animal Crossing first made its way into being an actual online community, within a matter of like days, there was already a currency established. There were rules, there were norms, there were do's and don'ts, there were exilable offenses, there were people who were in charge, there were enforcers. Very quickly, this whole societal structure was created. Now, I use that example because it's very close to my heart. And I was not there for the founding when all of this took place in the Louis Vuitton community, so I can't really speak to exactly how it was all done, but it is the exact same concept of the Louis Vuitton community was formed on Facebook, and all of those things were built. There were immediately hierarchies. There were people who were considered luxury handbag royalty. There were do's, there were don'ts, there was decorum, there was payment methods, there were exilable offenses. All of this social structure was established very quickly, and the people that were sort of the pioneers of that era, which would be those initial Facebook admins, were the ones who were running the show. And as with all things that fall into this category, a new system that gets built and has pioneering folks and expands and grows, as with everything that falls into that category, you are bound as time goes on to encounter corruption. And you are bound as time goes on for there to be squabbles and long-standing beefs and infighting, and all of this is bound to happen in any societal structure. Whether it's big, small, or micro, it is always bound to go that way. We always will have big shifts of people flooding in, flooding out, and eventually whole communities essentially crumble. That's just the life cycle of any society, micro or macro. That's just how it goes. And these Facebook groups they all fell victim to corruption. So as I stated, that is a reason why I absolutely left many of these groups a long time ago, and I launched my own platform because I essentially got tired of dealing with these people. So circling back to this conversation about one of the largest scammers in the luxury online resale community, allegedly, this all feeds into the corruption of this system. So you have these Facebook groups, they have these admin teams. These admin teams have created a hierarchy. There's also hierarchies amongst the various admin teams. These admin teams also are all members of a secret Facebook group, allegedly, where they all sit around essentially and kiki and, talk all the backroom things that go on. And a lot of people would say it's just a Facebook group. There isn't backroom corruption. Oh yes, there is. There is backroom corruption. Like, it's giving Ricos, honestly. It's giving borderline organized crime, honestly. The level of background corruption that goes on with these Facebook groups. And I really hate to be one of these people who says this, but again, as I said, it is inevitable with any structured society that is how it ends. And as much as I hate to say it, it was also inevitable in a social structure that was mostly based on the foundation of bored, wealthy housewives. I said it. We all know that bored, wealthy housewives are known for being very messy people. That's the whole reason why we have multi-billion-dollar franchises that are all centered around housewives in the United States of America. We know that is a demographic of people that get into the mess. So it really is no surprising that we have a lot of bored, wealthy women sitting around and creating drama and mess in online communities. It was bound to happen. So Cece, the person who we are talking about today, is one of the people who was in good with this group. Now, I don't necessarily know what the relationship is or isn't, but I do know they are in good with this group. I do know there are pictures of Cece hanging out with people in this group. There were many pictures in the olden days, and there are pictures in the modern day, which is what really raises a lot of the concern, because at this point, Cece is a very, very disgraced figure in this group. So why would anybody who is an administrator in this community have anything to do with Cece? I mean, to give you all a comparison, this is like being a bank manager and having other friends who are bank managers, but then you guys have like a tag along friend who was a bank robber. Like, I say this because I don't think a lot of people put enough weight on these administrators and their involvement in relationships with Cece. I don't think people put enough weight, because whenever I bring up the fact, and I've brought it up many times in the past, that Cece is friends with these people, lots of people always say like, oh, well, what difference does it make? People have friends, blah, blah, blah. No, it really does make a difference. Again, this is essentially saying that you all are, police, and you have a bunch of police friends, and then you have a tag-along friend who's like a serial unaliver, and you know it. And you don't do anything about it. You don't say anything about it. You just let them do their thing, like, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, and you guys do your thing. Now, hopefully that makes it a little bit more clear about how problematic and unethical that all is, because when you talk about it in terms of Facebook groups and scamming over handbags of all things, it doesn't really seem like a big deal, but it actually is a very, very big deal. So a lot of these groups, Cece has been in good with the girlies for a very long time. And so because of that, a lot of these people in these groups, they have protected Cece over the years. Now, again, I am an original, and I saw this when it all broke. When all of this broke, it essentially all started with one person speaking up and saying that they had been scammed by Cece. And as with all things, when one person spoke up and said they had been scammed by Cece, a bunch of other people came out the woodwork and were like, yeah, I had like a really sketchy interaction with Cece. Like, I had a weird transaction with Cece. I think I was scammed by Cece, etc., etc. And what was the response? Well, the bulk of these people who were administrators in the community, their response essentially was to delete every comment and ban and block anyone who mentioned anything about being scammed by Cece. That was the response. They scrubbed any sort of negative commentary in their groups about Cece. There were a few respectable group admins, and many of those people still exist, and there are a few respectable groups online, and they immediately all released statements back when this first happened that they were aware of the drama that was going around centered around Cece. Cece would not be a part of their groups. They would be permanently banned, etc., etc. They immediately came out and warned people about Cece and said they had a zero tolerance policy for any of it. But the rest of the people all scrubbed everything that had to do with Cece. Now, this was also a part of the online luxury resale era when the term trusted seller came out. It was trusted seller, premium seller, and essentially what that meant is, in many cases, you could pay a Facebook admin team. Now remember, it's literally in Facebook's terms and conditions and policies that you cannot accept payment from people for interacting with you on Facebook or being in a Facebook group. Facebook is free and people cannot be charging. Well, that's exactly what they did. They started charging people to be in their Facebook groups, post in their Facebook groups, and or call themselves a premium or trusted seller in a Facebook group. Many of these groups have premium or trusted seller list. you use a hashtag in all of your listings saying you're a premium or trusted seller, and you have to pay to do that. I actually did an undercover sting some years ago where I messaged an admin that I suspected was doing this and I suspected was accepting payment for this, and they sent me a whole written breakdown of how much I would have to pay, how much I would be paying monthly. And remember, this is all just to be able to put a hashtag on a Facebook post. Yeah. Now, when this trusted and premium seller stuff first broke, I was one of the first people that was very vocal and said, well, guys, I think this could cause a lot of problems down the line. If we are essentially taking a certain demographic of people selling online and putting them on a pedestal and putting them on a list as being verified or whatever, and we are telling people, you know, buyers, that these are safe people to do transactions with because they are on this list and because they have this title, wouldn't that just make it very easy for somebody who's actually a scammer to pay for said title? I brought this up something like almost 10 years ago. And me bringing this up got me banned and kicked out of a bunch of groups because how dare I? But that was essentially what I said, is it is a paid for title. I said, if you're going to make a list of people who are premium or trusted, whatever, it should be based off of their selling history. It should be people who have X amount of references, who have had this many transactions, etc., who have accounts that are in good standing. It should not just be as simple as you pay us $20 a month and you get to use the hashtag, because that's pay to play and anybody can pay to be on a list. So I said it back then and I will say it again, that trusted and premium sellers is a title that people pay for. It doesn't actually mean that they have any sort of reputable standing in the community. And I also always make the statement that I said back then, every seller is a trusted seller until they're not. There are lots of people who use and abuse their trusted seller status, and CC absolutely was one of those people. Again, because he was clicked up in these groups, he is one of those people that very quickly became known as a trusted seller, a premium seller, whatever. You would constantly see admins online vouching for CC and CC's business of, oh yes, they are trusted, they are premium, etc., etc. And therefore, a lot of people purchased from CC, a lot of people had no reservations buying from CC because they were being put on a pedestal as this very vetted person who had a big following and was aligned with all the administrators. Again, going back to one of my examples, would you suspect somebody of being a bank robber if they were besties with all the people who were bank managers? Do you think that a bunch of bank managers would knowingly befriend a bank robber? Now, some people would actually answer that question and say, why, yes, because what if there's a conspiracy at play where that bank robber is robbing banks and cutting them all in? Well, what if I told you guys that I allegedly believe that's what's going on here too, on a smaller scale? Because a lot of people say, well, these things about CC, they can't be true because all of these very credible people have vetted him and all these very credible people align with him. So why would they, if all these horrible things were true about them? The main question everybody asks, what would be the motive? What would be the motive for them risking their reputations, their brands, their businesses, of aligning with someone? Because just like in every crime, there always has to be a motive. And well, I just essentially gave you what that motive would be, allegedly. Make of that what you want. Nonetheless, so CC was a premium seller for a long time. Again, people start speaking out about being scammed by CC, and the group admins continue to scrub it. This goes on for years. Eventually, at some point, a new group is created, and this group is for the victims of CC. It is a group that is strictly for people who are victims of being scammed by CC, and this group was founded by somebody who is credible, who I have known for quite a few years in the community to be a very credible person. So I joined this group. I had not been scammed by CC, but you don't have to have been scammed to join. I had not been scammed, but I joined this group because I essentially wanted to go down the rabbit hole of how far this actually went. How deep did this actually go? Was it just a thing of CC, scammed one or two people here or there, or was this an actual full-blown operation? Allegedly. Well, I go down this rabbit hole by joining this group, and I come to find out that this scam that CC has been running at this point is one that has racked up tens of thousands, and I would say in the modern day, hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been stolen from people, allegedly. The stories that people tell in this group are insane. They are essentially going through the excuses that CC has given as to why either A, he sold them a product and they never received it, and they paid an unprotected payment method, so there's no way for them to get their money back. And or he consigned an item, which is even more devious. He consigned an item for them, meaning they sent in a, luxury item for him to sell on their behalf and be paid out. And he never paid them out. He sold the item and kept their money. The stories that are on and on about this are crazy. They're everything from flat tires to carjackings to home burglaries to like deaths in the family to, the excuses are a mile long. It's very much giving, I don't know if you guys watch Catfish, but they always bring this up in Catfish when like somebody's, talking to somebody online, and then it's the thing of like every time they're supposed to meet, they're like, oh my God, like I woke up this morning and I couldn't walk. And then it's like the next time they're supposed to meet, it's like, oh my God, my second aunt's third cousin, twice removed in law, died this morning and I can't meet. And Neve and Max on Catfish always say, like, if somebody's like throwing that out at you every single time you ask them a valid question, they're lying. Like they're a catfish. And the same thing applies in this realm of if somebody sells an item for you and every time you ask them about their money, there's like some new catastrophic event that's happened, they're lying. Like things happen. Something happened to me this year where I had a few items for consignment and there was a tornado. And as a result, it took me a few more days to list the items. Now I alerted all my customers and was like, hey, it's going to take me a little bit longer to get your items listed. There was a tornado, etc., etc. But all of those items were still listed within like 3 days. And all of those people were paid out when their items sold. So it's like things do absolutely happen in life, but if you are being legitimate, the event's going to happen, the event's going to pass, and you are going to follow through with what you said you were going to follow through on. That never happened with CC. There are many people to this day who have still never gotten their money and they've never gotten their items. So then the next question comes, well, how could CC get away with all of this? So a lot of people did various things. Some people tried to press criminal charges. I know some people have pursued things like small claims court, but the reality of the situation is it is very, very difficult to follow through on online crimes, and especially online crimes that have to do with the sale of items. It's kind of crazy to me, but we have been doing a lot of online sales for, at least the past like 20 years, even going back to like Craigslist and whatnot. Online sales have been going on forever, and there really still is no formal system or means of taking legal action against people for committing online crimes. Now, I'm not saying that it absolutely can't be done. It can be, but to my understanding, what's required to do it takes so much funding and time and reporting that your average person does not have the time or the money to pursue it. So the next thing is, people say, well, that's why there's payment apps, and those payment apps offer protection. A lot of times those apps do not necessarily offer protection. And again, CC had a lot of people paying using methods that did not have any buyer protection. Therefore, those apps are not responsible at all. There is the option of doing chargebacks, but depending on what app you're using, it's not always that simple to do chargebacks. So the question then becomes, how is CC in terms of using online platforms, especially online payment platforms, continuing to get away with this? So it then eventually comes out, allegedly, that CC was making multiple accounts using multiple social security numbers, and some of the social security numbers that were on these accounts that CC's was making were of minor children, allegedly. So at this point, I made a video about CC 6 months ago where I went into the depths about this situation and how this all went down. And, I checked the group that has people who were victims of CC every now and again just to see what's going on. Things were pretty quiet for a while. And then it pops up one day that CC is back. He is back in full force. He is scamming on Instagram. He is scamming on Facebook. And I also learned the shocking development from this group that CC has also sort of taken it to the next level. When I would have known CC scamming originally, it would have been mostly Louis Vuitton. But apparently CC is now also doing Chanel, which means, he's not just scamming people out of, $500, $1,000, maybe a couple $1,000s that we see typically with Louis Vuitton items. CC has now reached the level where he is scamming people out of $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. He has absolutely been emboldened by the fact that he has been able to get away with these crimes for so long, and he has successfully stolen, at this point, I'm sure, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands from people without any real consequences, that he has moved up in the ranks. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he moved to Hermes next, because it's very clear, he may have already, but it's very clear. I have CC blocked on everything. So I don't know what he does or doesn't do, but it's very clear that he has been emboldened by the fact that he has been able to get away with this for a very long time and has started upping the ante and scamming people out of larger amounts of money for a single instance. There is somebody who I saw very recently who said they were scammed out of like $4,800. That's just painful. So at this stage in the modern era, CC is considered an extremely disgraced figure. A lot of the hoopla that went on about CC was publicly known in this community. It was something that was definitely known in the circle of admins because it was brought to the attention of all the admins across this community. It is absolutely something that if you have been in the online luxury resale community as any sort of figurehead for any amount of time, you would know that CC is a disgraced person. You would know that CC's business is a disgraced business, and you would know that you essentially don't deal with CC if you are a person of any credibility, and you should stay far away from anything that has to do with CC. That is a known fact. So CC very recently made his way into the resale group of a very, very popular online luxury influencer. Again, I do not use names on the Luxe Tea, and this is all alleged, but CC allegedly made his way into a Facebook group that was sponsored by a very large, very well-known online luxury influencer. Now, this person I've never had a problem with. I know I followed them on my old page for certain, the one that got deleted, and I think I followed them on my new page. I never had an issue with them. You know, me personally, I've never been a fan of influencer culture. I think influencer culture is really dumb. I don't really understand the fascination that people have with essentially watching other people try on clothing and accessories. I personally have never understood it. I could definitely see why it's fascinating to people, but in the landscape where everything on social media is monetized, that creates a completely different issue. And I talked about this in the video I made about Foxy LV, which is also on my channel here, that people create very weird parasocial relationships with people online, and we absolutely are in a society and a time where social media literacy has people in a chokehold. They really just don't have any at all. And so it's like, in a world where social media is monetized, I'm not going to make a person money because they try on things in their closet. To me, that's just very silly. And I'm also not going to participate in their cult following because they try on things in their closet. And I don't inherently think that they're a good or better person because they try on things in their closet. I just don't. Again, this is no tea, no shade against this person. I've never had anything against this person. At the end of the day, I want everybody to win. Make your coins how you make them. I have said this before. I'm actually friends with quite a few social media influencers, and I think 99% of what they do is usually very humiliating and embarrassing and you know, borderline degeneracy at times, what people do for money. I talked about this in the video again that I mentioned about Foxy LV. People absolutely do the most on social media nowadays to make money. And I'm just not really with that. But at the end of the day, this person is very, very popular online. They, I would say, absolutely have a cult following. And I don't think their cult following realizes that I'm sure they're getting paid to do all of this, you know, putting on. But that's good for them. And I really hope that people open their eyes more about social media literacy. Nonetheless, I never had a problem with this person until this moment when they, as a large figure, allowed CC into their Facebook group. CC made his way into the Facebook group, and almost immediately there was backlash. There were several people in the group who came out and alerted this person, who is an admin, along with the rest of their admin team, and was like, hey, CC is in the group, and CC is a known scammer. CC has scammed people out of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you absolutely should not have this person in your group. You are a credible figure and people are joining this group because you're a credible figure. You should not have CC be a part of this group. They are known to have scammed people. And I believe they even sent them an invite to the victim group so that essentially they could see receipts to know that this was not just people slandering CC, that CC actually is well known for being very harmful in the community and that they should act quickly and responsibly to remove them, allegedly. So unfortunately, the response from this figure and admin, and I essentially will paraphrase, was that, well, the scamming that CC did not happen in their group, therefore they're not responsible for really doing anything or acting, allegedly. So in response to that, this admin team that, again, this very big influencer figure is a part of, allowed CC to be in their group for several months. Not days, not weeks, not months. Or I'm sorry, months. Now, me personally, if I was a large figure who was curating a space, a safe space for luxury and luxury resale, and something like this was brought to my attention, I would have acted immediately. I would have gone to my other admin friends that I know they all have. I know they all kiki. I would have gone to all of those girlies and immediately got the tea for myself and made that judgment call. And if that would have been done, the judgment call absolutely would have been to remove Cece. It would have been prompt. And so I could maybe see letting Cece be in the group for a couple days. I know Facebook admins absolutely have the ability to pause people's membership. I would have absolutely put Cece on some sort of pause or some sort of ability to not post, and essentially said, you know, to myself, not to Cece, I'm going to take some time to figure this out before I allow this person to be active in my group. Not what happened. Everybody stood by. They did absolutely nothing. Cece was allowed to do whatever they wanted in this group for however long. And, you know, again, this person had the philosophy of the scamming didn't happen in their group, so why should they care? Allegedly. So I don't know what the straw was that broke the camel's back, but Cece continued being Cece, which meant continuing being a scammer and scamming people. Again, I recently saw someone say they were scammed out of about $5,000. So eventually the issue got so big that this influencer admin could not continue to ignore the issue with Cece, and it all blew up big time. Now, I was never in said influencer admin's group, but I have seen many screenshots from inside said group when this blow up took place, and it was very nasty. I would say that the influencer admin completely mishandled this situation, that they also participated in the same actions that involved deleting, removing, banning, and blocking essentially anybody who spoke up, and essentially trying to scrub the group from, any discussion of Cece and Cece's disgraced participation, and especially trying to scrub any discussion of the fact that they were told about Cece and they did not act appropriately. The blow up was nasty. It was bad. And throughout the entire situation of what I saw, the admin influencer did not take any accountability for the role that they played in not only not doing their due diligence and allowing Cece into the group in the first place, not responding when other people brought up Cece's questionable past, and continuing to not respond to the extent that Cece was allowed to stay and participate in the group for several months. So then at a later point in time, the admin started participating in a group chat that involves people who were victims of Cece. I am also in said group chat, and I again observed the same general conversations of the admin influencer essentially taking no accountability whatsoever for the part that they played in Cece being in the group. When I confronted them personally in this group chat and asked them, like, hey, so why exactly did you let Cece stay in this group for an extended period of time? And they ignored the question repeatedly until eventually they did type up some long-winded answer and explanation where they again were pretty hostile, pretty snappy, not very friendly, not very demure, and basically said that, they were tired of everybody, disrupting their peace about this whole situation. And, they knew Cece was bad news from their business, but they didn't know Cece's actual name. So when they joined the group, they didn't know Cece's actual name. And they basically said that, like, they were not aware that Cece was a scammer. They didn't know any of this. And, then they went on this whole rant about how, like, religion and God. And again, I always just make the posture every time. I never know what God has anything to do with 99% of what people bring up. I personally am not a super religious person, but I have nothing against religious people. And even as somebody who is not a religious person, it really annoys me when people use the Lord's name in vain, when they just start bringing God into everything. And it really is just you're using God as a cover for taking accountability for your own actions, because God has absolutely nothing to do with scamming people out of handbags on Facebook. None of that has anything to do with God. Let's just be real here. So they do this whole dilly-dallying, backpedaling, and it essentially all ends with them saying that, like, they're not going to be talking about this anymore. They're not going to be addressing questions or follow-ups or criticisms about it anymore. And they didn't know that the person was a scammer. Well, allegedly. There is then this follow-up that somebody is able to find the exact screenshot of these people all saying that CC was a scammer, and this person essentially responding in a very nasty, condescending way, again with the response of, well, the scamming didn't happen in this group, so what's your point? That's a paraphrase. So essentially at that point, they were caught in 4K as far as I'm concerned, basically saying that they didn't care at all that people tried to warn them. That is why they allowed CC to stay in the group for months at a time and did nothing about it, and CC continued to scam people. The admin influencer is now essentially backpedaling, and they're now running around trying to expose CC themselves. In a weird turn of events, they've now produced quite a bit of media on their own trying to expose CC for being a scammer, and they have also started to go out of their way, and they're claiming that they're claiming that God has directed them to fight for the victims of CC to get their money back. And you know, I could almost get with that if they would take accountability for the fact that they did not use their own discernment when CC first came into the picture. Again, you can't claim to be a champion for helping people and try to swoop in and be a savior after the fact and after all this wrong was done, when you had the ability to use your discernment and not allow the wrongdoings to happen in the first place. And let's say your discernment failed you and those wrongdoings did happen, then you at least have the responsibility to take accountability and say, you know what? This one got past me, and a lot of people in my curated safe space were put at risk and or scammed. And I will take responsibility for that and help those people. But no, they're trying to play the savior card. Essentially, I view as PR, because they are essentially complicit in the sense that they let CC into the group in the first place, allegedly. Quite frankly, it's all very disappointing in my opinion, because as I said, I never had any issue with this person. I don't really jive with social media influencer culture, as I also stated, but I'm never going to hate on somebody for getting their coins. If people are willing to jump around in a circle, clap their hands 3 times, and click their feet together for a check, good on them. They're getting the check. I love that for them. But that's just not really my thing. But this was honestly very disappointing. And in my conversation that I had with the admin influencer that they essentially refused to respond to, because again, they refused to take accountability for the part they played in the situation, I explained to them that, you know, they also followed up saying that, like, oh, they're a business owner and they're a career woman and they have a family, they have all these responsibilities, you know, this isn't their responsibility, stopping people from being scammed, basically. And I responded in that conversation and I said, well, here's the thing. we all make a choice to participate in these communities. And we also all make a choice to be a figurehead in these communities. There are tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who are in the luxury handbag community. There is only a few handfuls of them who actually take it amongst themselves to be a figure. When I was the Louis Vuitton princess for about a decade and I built a large following of over 20,000 people, I didn't consider myself an influencer in the community, but I absolutely considered myself a curator, an archiver, and I was a figure in that community. Now, I no longer have that name because, well, that's a story for another day. I was one of the people who got their accounts deleted, etc., etc. But I still to this day serve as a figure in the community, as I always have. And the reality is, when you choose to be a figure in a community, you have additional responsibilities than everybody else. Yes, everybody else can say, well, none of this is my business. I don't have any responsibility for what happens or doesn't happen. You're right. That is the take that 99% of people get to have. But when you decide to be a figure in this community, and especially when you decide to curate a space for people to engage and participate in the community, you absolutely have additional responsibilities and obligations for maintaining the integrity of that space. You absolutely positively do. This whole thing of you want to be a figurehead, but you don't want the responsibility that comes along with it, it just doesn't work that way. And so I was very disappointed to hear that take from the admin influencer. I really hoped that they had a little bit more depth to them as a person than that. But the modern era is they are now crusading around claiming to be trying to expose and protect people from this person. I guess that's that thing of like, two wrongs don't make a right, whatever. Perhaps they were wrong in the first half, but now they're trying to be right in the second half. And regardless of whether they take accountability or not, and regardless of their strange policies and philosophies, regardless of that, I guess they are helping people now, and that's good. So I can go along with that. But I still struggle with their philosophies, and I still absolutely think that they need to have a better grasp of what it means to be in the position that they have carved out for themselves, and what it means to be a community member, and what it means to be a figurehead and curator of a space in a community. This was a long one. I did not plan on speaking this long, but I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and more than anything, I wish peace to everybody who's involved in this situation, to the people who have not gotten their money back. I really hope that you do one day. I really hope that CC is brought to like actual justice one of these days, because it's honestly devastating what they have done to this community. They have caused so much harm to the online resale world. They have caused so much harm in the landscape of consignment. They have broken the trust of so many people in the online luxury community, and that makes it hard for other people who are in the online luxury community. I really hope this situation has a resolution. Again, as I said, this is a situation that has been going on for years now. The victims group has been together since 2019. That's 5 years. And the scamming took place before the group. This is a situation that has gone on for way too long. And it is honestly just a tragedy that so many people are willing to protect their friends, and so many people are willing to turn a blind eye to someone who is actively a cancer in a community that they're also a part of. Again, this is your reminder that everything that I talk about in the Luxe Tea is alleged, and all names are pseudonames. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I really hope to make an update to this video one day that CC has actually been brought to some sort of real justice for their crimes. As always, enjoy the rest of your week. Make sure to check out other videos on my YouTube channel, and I guess I gotta end this one with safe shopping out there.